Hello, so today I'm going to talk about the audiobooks that I listened to in April. So, I love audiobooks, and I hate using my phone to listen to them. So, my phone is one of those ones that doesn't have a headphone jack, so you have to listen to it through Bluetooth, which I guess is fine. But it's also giant. Look at how big this thing is. This is way too big. I can't carry this around like doing dishes. Well, I can, but I don't like to. So what I end up using is MP3 players. And Apple recently has stopped making their iPod, I think it's iPod Touch, but I have an iPod Nano. And then I also have this SanDisk little MP3 player. And with these I can use my headphones. I can just stick them on my shirt, plop them in my pocket, and voila. My favorite thing to do while I listen to books is crochet. And so I crocheted a lot of things I didn't crochet a lot of things. I crocheted several things in April while I was listening to audiobooks. So the first book that I listened to was Sourdough. I don't have a physical copy of any of these books, so sorry. I guess I'll just show you I can show it to you on here. But Sourdough is written by Robin Sloan, and it was narrated by Therese Plummer. And Sourdough is about a woman who has like a career in tech and discovers bread making through an unusual source. And she's gifted a sourdough starter. And it's her journey after she receives that sourdough starter. So that's the story. The narration, again, is by Therese Plummer. The narration is good. With any audiobook, I find what happens is, on occasion, there's a part where I feel like I probably would have read it with a different emotion. And that happened several times in this book. I felt like the book called for a little bit more somberness, where the person reading it read it with a little bit more pep. So, that happened a couple times within the book. When I originally learned about Sourdough, I thought it was going to be magical and mystical, and I think it's listed under magical realism, and there's a little bit of that, but it feels like the book is trying to bring up the topic of food and what we consider food and food purity. I don't know, it wasn't, I like magical realism. I like that genre, and I was hoping for more of that. It was a perfectly fine book. It was fine to listen to. It was an okay book. I will remember it. It's not, it's fine. The next book I listened to was a book that I heard a lot of people on YouTube saying that it's a good book to listen to as an audiobook, and that's Sadie. So in Sadie is written like a podcast, so it's part from the point of view of Sadie and part from the point of view of a person doing a podcast about Sadie. So because of that, it is a very good audiobook. It has cast of characters. There's a person reading for Sadie, there's a person reading for the podcast person, and then people reading for the people the podcast person is interviewing. And I typically don't like multiple voices in a book, but because of how it's written, this works really well. Another thing, as far as the audio reading goes, so each person who has a main part is great. They're really, really good at reading their parts. But then there's a couple of parts where you can tell the person isn't an actor and is just reading. And also the voice doesn't match completely. So one part I'm thinking of, the character is like some 40-year-old man who is gruff and rumbly, and it sounds like the person reading it is like 18, their voice hasn't cracked yet. Like, it just does not match. And it really brings you out of the story when you hear people reading it like that. And they're small parts, so you can get right back into the story after that. But when those happen, it's kind of like, ugh. Wasn't this produced? What happened? The book, again, is okay. I didn't love the last bits of it. I did find myself wanting to listen to it, so it was okay. I didn't love it, but I didn't hate it. The next book I listened to is called One Night, Two Souls Went Walking. And when I read the summary of this book, I was so excited to listen to it. A young interfaith chaplain is joined on her hospital rounds one night by an unusual companion, a rough and ready dog who may or may not be a ghost. As she tends to the souls of her patients, young and old, living last moments or navigating fundamentally altered lives, their stories provide unexpected healing to her own heartbreak. So that sounds like a book that would be so interesting to me. Again, I love magical realism. I want to see two people walking around and a ghost dog that might help. But the story was not great. It was about a chaplain. It was about her doing her rounds. But every moment of the book is you're learning a tiny bit about the person that she's doing rounds with. There's nothing in depth about her herself. She had somebody that she loved, and that love went away. And I guess this is trying to say that the people that she's doing rounds with help her heal from that, but that's the first time reading that part. I did not get that from this book at all. It seemed incredibly shallow, no depth to anybody that we learn about. It's little snippets of lives and nothing deep. Kind of like this happens and then there's this woman and this is what happens with this woman and this is what happens with this guy and this is what happens with the girl and this is what happened and then it ended. I listened to the whole thing. Like, I never stopped. It was fine. I was really looking forward to it ending. So it wasn't that great. I was really disappointed. The next book that I listened to, and the last one, is called Upright Women Wanted. Again, I loved the premise of this book, and so I was really excited to read it. So Upright Women Wanted is written by Sarah Gailey, and it's narrated by Rami Nordlinger, and it's 3 hours and 52 minutes. Esther is a stowaway. She's hidden herself away in the librarian's book wagon in an attempt to escape the marriage her father has arranged for her. A marriage to the man who was previously engaged to her best friend who she was in love with, her best friend who was just executed for possession of resistance propaganda. The future American Southwest is full of bandits, fascists, and queer librarian spies on horseback trying to do the right thing. Like, it's such a great premise. So the person reading this book has kind of a gruffy voice. In the beginning, I was like, oh no, she's speaking really fast and her voice is kind of gruffy. I'm not sure if I'm going to enjoy it. But after 3 minutes, I was like, holy crap, this is the perfect voice for the perfect book. The book itself could be going into more depth into the characters. There's the way I feel about the book, I don't think matches the way the book actually is, because I love the book. I love the premise. I love the idea. I like the idea of rogue librarians who are outlaws. So because I love the idea so much, I love the book probably more than I should, because it is pretty surface. The story definitely could have been more in depth. It's a very short story. Like I said, it was 3 hours and something. I listened to it in a day. I'm gonna unapologetically say I like this book. It was good. The narration was great. It was a very good story to listen to. Yes, there could have been more depth into the book. There could have been more story to it. The story was incredibly simple. But I forgive all of that because I really liked the premise of the book. So I listened to 4 books. I crocheted a lot of things.